Why is a hospital bracelet still on your wrist when the system already erased your name? The nurse whispered, stepping back as the incubator lights flickered over 2 newborn twins. The waitress froze, her fingers trembling around a torn plastic band marked with half-visible code. M7X9DL. Blood had dried along the inside of her hospital sleeve, the fabric still damp from delivery, while somewhere behind her, a monitor beeped once, then flatlined into silence. The mafia boss didn't move at first. He stood in the doorway of the VIP maternity ward, coat still wet from rain, eyes locked not on her face but on the bracelet like it had just spoken a language only he could understand. "Say that again," he said quietly, voice low enough that even the machines seemed to hesitate. The nurse tried to recover her tone, polite, clinical, poisonous. "Sir, she was never registered as the mother of these children. There is no record of her name in this wing." The waitress tightened her grip on the twins instinctively, her lips cracked from dehydration, her body still shaking from surgery without proper recovery. "I signed everything," she whispered, not to defend herself, but to confirm she still existed. The mafia boss finally stepped forward, slow, deliberate, his gaze dropping to the bracelet again. Then to the twins, then back to her face, as if something in the math of the world had just broken. 3 hours earlier, she had been just another invisible shift worker in this hospital, pushing a cleaning cart through corridors where glass reflected people who never looked at her twice. Her apron was still folded in her locker downstairs, stained faintly with coffee and disinfectant, a life she was supposed to return to after this emergency delivery. No one called her by name here, not even when the contractions started early, not even when they moved her through the service entrance instead of the main ward. The system already decided she was temporary, but she remembered everything. The signature, the nurse who hesitated before marking the file, the man in a gray suit who never looked at her directly when he handed over the temporary surrogate consent form. She remembered asking, "What does this mean for my children?" and being told gently, "You'll understand later." Now later had a face. The mafia boss. He didn't speak much, but when he did, the entire room adjusted itself around his silence. "Who authorized deletion of maternal identity?" he asked, eyes still on the bracelet. No one answered immediately. That silence was not confusion, it was calculation. The nurse finally forced a smile, too controlled to be natural. "There must be a misunderstanding in the registry system. We can fix it." "No," the waitress said suddenly, sharper than she expected, surprising even herself. She shifted the twins slightly higher against her chest, forcing herself to stand straighter despite the pain tearing through her body. "There is no misunderstanding. They took my name." The mafia boss's eyes narrowed slightly at that. Not at her accusation, but at the certainty in it. Then his gaze dropped again, and this time he saw it. A second imprint under the bracelet's barcode, faint, almost erased, like someone had tried to overwrite reality but failed completely. His hand lifted slightly, not touching her, but close enough that the air between them changed. "This code," he said slowly, "doesn't belong to this hospital." And that was when the monitor behind her blinked once more, and pulled up a file that should not have existed at all. The monitor behind her flickered again, the glow washing over the sterile walls in a sick, clinical pulse. A file opened on its own, no one touched it. Rows of data populated slowly, as if something buried deep in the system was reluctant to come back to life. The nurse took one step forward, too fast, too rehearsed. "That screen is outdated. It sometimes pulls archived test entries." Her voice was smooth, but her eyes didn't match it. The waitress tightened her grip on the twins, shifting her weight on legs still trembling from surgery, refusing the chair they kept trying to push toward her. "Those aren't test entries," she said quietly. "That's the time they moved me from room 3 to the isolation wing. I remember the clock. It stopped at 2:17. Silence tightened. Not loud silence, worse. The kind that listens back. Somewhere behind them, a cart rolled past with a soft metallic squeak, then stopped too long before continuing again, like whoever pushed it was waiting to hear what would happen next. The mafia boss finally stepped closer to the monitor, not rushing, not reacting, just absorbing. His eyes tracked the lines of data. Admission time, missing discharge signature, a second access log stamped exactly 4 minutes after delivery. Print it, he said. No raise in voice. No emotion. Just wait. The nurse hesitated. Sir, that would require clearance. Print it, he repeated. And this time she obeyed. The printer in the corner hissed to life, spitting out paper too slowly for comfort. The waitress watched it like it might disappear if she blinked too long. Her hand drifted instinctively to the torn edge of her hospital sleeve, fingers brushing dried blood she hadn't noticed she was still carrying. They told me I was transferred, she said, not to defend herself now, but to anchor her memory in something real. But I never left this floor. The mafia boss didn't look at her. He was reading the printed page as it slid out inch by inch. Then his gaze stopped, on a line that didn't match anything else. A second keycard had been issued under her patient ID. Issued after she was already in surgery. That's not possible, the nurse said too quickly. Too sharp, a crack showing through polish. From the hallway, footsteps approached. Measured, expensive, confident. A man in a gray suit appeared at the threshold, holding a tablet already open before he entered. Consigliere. His smile was immediate, practiced. There seems to be a clerical misunderstanding regarding maternity documentation, he said lightly, as if correcting a dinner reservation. These things happen in high-volume private facilities. The waitress turned toward him slowly. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut cleaner than panic ever could. You signed my consent form while I was sedated. The consigliere's smile didn't move, but his eyes did, just once, toward the nurse. A signal. The mafia boss noticed it. He always noticed what people tried not to show. The printer stopped. The room felt louder. Without it, the waitress reached into the pocket of her hospital gown and pulled out something folded too many times to be clean. A receipt. 2 coffees. Time-stamped 2:19 a.m. room service from the VIP wing. I was in labor, she said softly. Who orders coffee for 2 in a delivery room? No one answered. Not immediately. The nurse looked down first. The consigliere adjusted his cufflink. The mafia boss finally turned his head, not to her, but to the hallway camera above the door. Then he spoke, low enough that only the nearest people heard. Pull last night's footage from Corridor B. The consigliere answered too quickly again. Already corrupted, sir. Routine data loss during system maintenance. The mafia boss stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, there was no maintenance scheduled. The waitress felt it then, not relief, not safety, but structure shifting under reality. Like the building itself had been lying. In her arms, one of the twins made a small sound, and the bracelet on her wrist, half cut, half erased, slipped slightly, revealing a second layer of ink beneath the barcode. Faded, almost invisible, a different name underneath hers. The second layer of ink beneath the barcode looked almost accidental, like a mistake the skin of the system had tried to forget. The waitress held her wrist steady, though her hand trembled under the weight of 2 newborns pressed against her chest. The mafia boss didn't touch her. He didn't speak at first. He simply stared at the hidden line of text under the faded barcode, as if the truth had been waiting there longer than any of them had been alive. Then his phone vibrated once. A single notification from the hospital's internal audit channel. He didn't unlock it immediately. He looked at the screen the way a man looks at a locked door that has just moved on its own. The nurse tried to step forward. Sir, that's just legacy encoding, old labeling format. It doesn't mean anything operational. Her voice was careful, too careful, like she was walking across glass she had already memorized the cracks of. The mafia boss finally unlocked the notification. A system log filled the screen. Admin override confirmed. Delete mother record. Timestamp, 2:23 a.m., 7 minutes after delivery. The room didn't react immediately, because systems like this don't expect to be read out loud in human space. The waitress saw his eyes change first. Not anger, not shock. Something colder, calculation forced into violence. 7 minutes, he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. The consigliera stepped forward immediately. Too fast. That's not a verified entry. Corrupted metadata from an incomplete backup restore. These logs can be manipulated. But his hand was already closing his tablet. Too late. The mafia boss noticed that too. The closing motion. The instinct to hide instead of explain. The waitress took a step forward despite the pain tightening her body. I was awake, she said, voice steady now, anchored by something deeper than fear. I heard them typing. I remember the sound of the keyboard. They weren't saving my life. They were removing me from it. A silence dropped so heavily it seemed to press against the monitors. Somewhere in the hallway, a stretcher wheel squeaked and stopped halfway through its turn. As if even motion had decided to wait. The mafia boss turned his head slightly. Bring me the original admission ledger, he said. Not loud. Not urgent. Final. The nurse hesitated. The consigliera answered instead, softer now. That ledger is sealed under family compliance protocol. That sentence landed differently. The mafia boss looked at him fully now. Open it, he said. No emotion. Only structure. The waitress adjusted her grip on the twins, shifting one higher as a soft sound escaped the newborn's chest. She whispered without realizing she was speaking aloud. They told me I was never assigned to this room. The mafia boss's gaze flicked back to her wrist, to the bracelet, to the hidden ink beneath it, then to the nurse. Who issued the second key card? The question was not speculation. It was already accusation forming its skeleton. The nurse's composure cracked just slightly at the edge. Temporary access was granted for emergency. That's not what I asked, he interrupted. The consigliere exhaled through his nose, almost like a laugh he didn't want. To admit, sir, you're chasing procedural anomalies in a maternity system. This is not. The mafia boss finally stepped closer to the terminal. The screen reflected in his eyes as he typed one command himself. Access trace. Key card 442A. The result loaded instantly. Issued at 2:26 a.m. Assigned to unknown administrator. The waitress looked at the screen and felt something inside her chest go still. That's the same time they took my name off the file, she said quietly. The mafia boss didn't answer her. Not yet, but his silence shifted. It wasn't disbelief anymore. It was direction. And when the system refreshed again on its own, pulling up a restricted subfolder labeled Maternal Override Archive, every person in the room saw the same thing appear at the bottom of the file. A signature that should not have been there, already validated before anyone had opened it. The moment the restricted archive opened, the screen light washed over every face in the room like a silent verdict. Under Maternal Override Archive, rows of timestamps aligned too perfectly, too cleanly, like someone had rewritten reality with surgical precision. The signature at the bottom didn't belong to any nurse, any administrator, any known hospital authority. It belonged to a clearance level that did not exist in public records, only in internal family doctrine. The consigliera exhaled softly, almost amused. That's a ghost signature. It appears when the system hasn't fully reconciled legacy data. His tone was gentle, almost apologetic, like he was explaining bad weather. The waitress didn't move. She stood in the middle of the sterile light, holding the twins tighter against her chest. The hospital bracelet now half hidden beneath her fingers, as if she could physically protect the truth by covering it. I didn't sign anything after delivery, she said. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. I was still under anesthesia when that appeared. A few staff members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances that tried to stay neutral but failed at the edges. The nurse forced a small, professional laugh. That's not possible to verify emotionally. Memory under sedation is unreliable. The words were polite, rehearsed, but they pushed the room 1 degree colder. The mafia boss finally stepped away from the terminal. He didn't look at the waitress yet. Instead, he looked at the nurse. Show me the physical ledger. The nurse hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. Sir, the ledger is in compliance storage. Access requires board-level approval. From the hallway, 2 security guards entered quietly, not rushing, but positioned like they already expected resistance. One of them glanced at the waitress and then quickly away, as if looking too long would make her situation real. The consigliera stepped slightly between them and the terminal. "We are escalating a sensitive medical documentation issue into a full lockdown procedure," he said calmly. "That will trigger regulatory attention outside the family structure." The mafia boss didn't respond. He simply turned his head slightly, and that small movement made both guards stop where they were. "Open storage," he said. "No emotion. No volume. Just certainty." The waitress adjusted her stance as pain pulled through her side, but she did not step back when one of the guards looked at her like she didn't belong in the room's equation. Instead, she reached into the folded edge of her hospital blanket and pulled out something small. An intake slip, crumpled and stained with antiseptic ink. She placed it on the counter in front of the terminal. "This is my admission record before it was changed," she said. "Room 3, 1:52 a.m. I remember the clock above the door." The nurse's smile tightened. "That slip is incomplete documentation. It has no legal standing without system confirmation." The waitress looked at her directly. "Then why does it have my blood type written correctly?" The question didn't rise. It landed. A silence followed that wasn't empty, it was pressured. The mafia boss's eyes shifted briefly to the slip. Then to the nurse's reaction. Just a fraction too late. Just a fraction too controlled. The kind of delay that only happens when someone is calculating what not to say. One of the guards cleared his throat. "Sir, if we proceed with physical archive access, we may need to detain all non-essential personnel in the wing for verification." His wording was professional, but his eyes flicked again to the waitress, lingering half a second too long on the twins. The consigliera nodded immediately. "That would be the correct procedure. We cannot risk misinformation spreading." The waitress stood still, but her grip on the twins tightened almost imperceptibly, as if she understood the shift in language was the beginning of something worse than denial. The mafia boss finally spoke again, quieter than before. "No one moves her." It wasn't protection yet. It was instruction. And for the first time, the nurse's confidence cracked completely at the edges, because when she reached for her tablet to confirm the ledger access request, the screen displayed something that should not have changed. A second authorization had already been approved under her own login, without her ever touching it. The nurse's tablet still glowed with the unauthorized approval stamp, frozen on her screen like a mistake that refused to disappear. Her fingers hovered above it, shaking just slightly now, no longer in control of the system she had just claimed to own. The mafia boss didn't look at her reaction. He looked at the timestamp beneath the approval line. 2:26 a.m. Then he looked at the waitress. She was still standing, still holding the twins, but her eyes were no longer searching the room. They were focused on something in her hospital blanket. Slowly, she reached inside the folded fabric and pulled out a second object, wrapped in gauze that had been cut too carefully to be random. A small recorder. Old, scratched. The kind used in medical intake rooms when systems sometimes fail. She didn't hand it to anyone yet. She just held it. "They told me to sign after delivery," she said quietly. "But I remember hearing a voice say I didn't have a legal right to refuse anything anymore." The consigliera let out a soft, controlled laugh. Audio devices in recovery wards are not uncommon. They're used for compliance documentation, not legal interrogation. His tone was smooth, reassuring, like a man correcting a child's misunderstanding. The waitress pressed the button. The room did not expect sound, but it came anyway, faint, distorted, her own breathing. Then a voice, calm, administrative, detached. "Record indicates maternal identity will be reassigned under emergency protocol." A second voice followed immediately after, colder. "No traceable link to biological parent will remain after system sync." The recording stopped abruptly, as if someone had cut the world mid-sentence. No one spoke for a moment after that. Even the guards seemed unsure whether they were allowed to breathe normally. The nurse moved first. That's not complete context. Those recordings are often taken during transitional sedation states. Patients misinterpret procedural language. She spoke quickly now, too quickly, as if speed could replace certainty. The mafia boss finally stepped forward. He didn't take the recorder yet. He looked at it as if distance itself mattered. Then his eyes shifted, not to the nurse, not to the consigliera, but to the timestamp embedded in the file metadata displayed on the nurse's tablet. 2:23 a.m. This was recorded 3 minutes before the deletion log, he said quietly. No one corrected him. That silence was heavier than agreement. The waitress held the recorder tighter now, her fingers whitening around its edges. I didn't understand what they were doing at the time, she said. But I remember they asked me to repeat my name. Twice. Then they stopped using it. The nurse exhaled, forcing composure back into her voice. Names are sometimes withheld in emergency neonatal cases to avoid administrative errors. It's standard procedure in high-security maternity units. The consigliera nodded slightly. Exactly. This is a procedural misunderstanding being amplified by incomplete memory reconstruction. But the mafia boss wasn't listening to either of them now. He was staring at the nurse's tablet again. A new line had appeared in the log history without input. Second authorization source confirmed. Matching internal family access node. His jaw tightened slightly, the first visible change in him since the recording started. He finally took the recorder from the waitress's hand. Not gently, not roughly, just deliberately, like confirming. Wait, he pressed play again himself. The voice repeated the same line about reassignment of maternal identity. Then stopped. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he turned slightly toward the consigliere. Who owns internal access node clearance? He asked. The consigliere didn't answer right away. That delay was the first crack. The nurse tried to step in quickly. Sir, that classification overlaps with multiple departments. It's not. Answer the question, the mafia boss said, still quiet. The consigliere smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. It would be inappropriate to assign ownership without a full audit. These systems are designed to be shared across family governance. The waitress watched him carefully now, not interrupting, but not retreating either. Then she spoke one more time. The voice on that recording wasn't medical staff, she said. It was someone giving orders like they already owned my life. The mafia boss turned his head slightly toward her, then back to the recorder. And for the first time, his silence wasn't directed at the room. It was directed at someone inside it. The consigliere's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He didn't check it immediately, but when he did, his thumb paused before unlocking the screen, just long enough for the mafia boss to notice that he had already been waiting for it to arrive. Rain tapped softly against the hospital's glass walls, each drop sliding down like a slow, unwilling witness. The mafia boss held the recorder in one hand and the nurse's tablet in the other, both screens reflecting the same truth in different languages. A second phone appeared in his palm, older, matte black, pulled from the consigliere's pocket without a word. The consigliere didn't stop him. That was the first mistake. The waitress stood a few feet away, still holding the twins, her arms shaking less now. Not from weakness, but from the refusal to let go. I don't want money, she said quietly, eyes fixed on the floor for a moment, then lifting. I want my name to mean something when they write it next to my children. The room didn't respond. Didn't know how. Only the hum of a distant machine filled the silence, steady and indifferent. The mafia boss unlocked the old phone. One contact remained pinned at the top. Internal medical oversight, direct family line. No name, just access. He didn't call it. He copied it. Then he turned slightly toward the nurse. Pull shift logs from the night of delivery. The nurse hesitated. Sir, those are archived under... Now, he said. Not louder, just final. The consigliere stepped in quickly, almost too quickly. That will trigger cross-department flags. It may take hours to reconstruct clean data. The mafia boss didn't look at him. Then start. Somewhere behind them, a television in a staff break room murmured faintly through the wall. Some low-volume news broadcast mixing with the sound of dishes clinking from the cafeteria. Life continuing, unaware of the structure breaking beneath it. The waitress shifted her weight slightly, careful not to disturb the twins. "They moved me twice," she said. "First from the recovery wing, then to a room with no cameras. I remember the second hallway had a broken light." Her voice wasn't pleading. It was placing coordinates. The mafia boss finally looked at her, not with doubt now, but with calculation that had changed shape. He opened the shift log as it arrived on the tablet. Rows of names, timestamps, assignments. Clean. Too clean. Then he saw it. A gap. Exactly 7 minutes. No entry. No transition. Just absence, as if time itself had been edited. His thumb paused above the screen. 7 minutes missing, he said quietly. The nurse exhaled too fast. "That can happen during server sync." "Not like this," he interrupted. The consigliere's phone vibrated again. He didn't check it immediately. That hesitation lasted half a second too long. The mafia boss noticed. He always noticed delay before truth. The waitress stepped forward one small step, still holding the twins steady. "During those 7 minutes," she said, "someone told me I never gave birth here. They said I was moved in already unstable condition." The nurse shook her head slightly, controlled, practiced. That would align with emergency reclassification protocol. But her eyes didn't meet anyone's now. The mafia boss lowered the tablet. "Pull access history for every device logged in that corridor," he said. Then he added, quieter, "including staff personal devices." The consigliere finally looked up. "Sir, that's beyond standard." The mafia boss cut him off with a glance. "No anger. No force. Just removal of argument itself." The room tightened again, but differently now. Not confusion. Alignment. Like something had begun choosing sides without permission. The waitress looked at him for the first time without fear. Only exhaustion and clarity. "I don't need revenge," she said. "I need them to stop changing what happened to me." The mafia boss didn't answer. He was already scrolling through the access logs now, slower, deliberate. Then he stopped. One entry repeated 3 times under different credentials. Same device signature. Same location. Same timestamp range as the missing 7 minutes. The consigliere's name appeared once at the top of the overlapping access routes. The mafia boss did not speak immediately. He only stared at it. And when he finally lifted his eyes, they did not go to the nurse or the logs or the waitress, but to the consigliere, as if seeing him for the first time in years without the mask of assumption still intact. The consigliere didn't move when the mafia boss's eyes settled on him. He only adjusted his cuff like the silence in the room belonged to him, not the other way around. The shift logs still glowed on the tablet between them. 7 missing minutes now expanded into a pattern of repeated access signatures, all converging on a single source masked under rotating credentials. The boss closed the file without looking away from him. That was the first shift. Not anger. Removal of uncertainty. "We go to the corridor," he said quietly. No one asked which one. They already knew. The maternity wing hallway felt different under daytime lights, as if exposure had made the lies more visible instead of less. A security camera above room 3 blinked steadily, its red recording light reflecting off polished tile. The waitress followed a few steps behind the mafia boss now, still holding the twins, her hospital sleeve twisted around her wrist where the broken bracelet hung. Like a scar that refused to disappear. She wasn't speaking much anymore. She didn't need to. Every detail she had once thought was small was now aligned into something sharp. Clock times, footsteps, the broken hallway light she remembered flickering like a pulse. The boss stopped beneath the camera. "Play corridor feed," he said. The technician hesitated. "Sir, playback for that period is incomplete due to system purge." "Play what exists," he interrupted. The screen above them stuttered alive. Static first, then fragments. A gurney rolling too fast. A nurse turning her head away from the lens at exactly the same angle the consigliere was standing now. The waitress leaned slightly forward without realizing it. "That's the second hallway," she said softly. The light was broken there. It kept flickering on my left side. No one corrected her, because the footage showed it. The flicker, exactly where she said. The consigliere stepped closer to the screen, calm still intact but thinner now. Partial corruption creates visual suggestion bias. Memory fills gaps when footage is incomplete. His voice was smooth, but his hand hovered too long near his pocket before returning to stillness. The mafia boss noticed. He always noticed what people tried not to finish doing. Pause, the boss said. The image froze mid-frame. A nurse pushing the gurney. A shadow just out of frame behind her. Zoom left edge, he added. The technician obeyed. The shadow resolved into a hand holding a tablet. The same tablet signature that matched the admin override. The consigliere exhaled a small laugh. That could be any staff member. The waitress spoke then, quieter than before. He wasn't carrying it like staff. He was checking it every few seconds. Like he was waiting for something to disappear. The boss turned slightly toward her. Not correcting, not affirming, just absorbing. Then he asked, "What time did you hear them stop using your name?" She didn't hesitate. 2:23. Right before the lights flickered. The boss looked back at the frozen frame. Timestamp overlay, 2:23 a.m. The same minute the access logs had shown the deletion spike. He didn't react outwardly. Instead, he took the tablet from the technician and walked back toward the private consultation room. No urgency. Just direction. Inside, he placed the recorder on the table, then the shift logs, then the printouts of the access chain. The consigliere followed, slower now. "Sir, we're risking overinterpretation of coincidental system failures." The boss finally looked at him. "Then explain why your credentials appear in every failure." The room went still. Not loud stillness. Structural stillness. The kind that holds weight. The consigliere smiled again, but this time it didn't hold shape. "You're building a narrative from fragmented data." The boss nodded slightly. "No," he said. "I'm removing yours from it." He pressed play on the recorder again. The voice echoed through the room. Administrative, detached, final. The consigliere's phone vibrated once. Then again. He didn't check it. Not immediately. But when he finally looked down, his expression changed for the first time. Not into fear, but into recognition. Because on the screen, an internal message had already been opened for him, confirming that all access routes tied to the maternity override were being traced in real time. And below it, a second line appeared automatically. One he hadn't authorized. One only someone else could have triggered. Subject Protection Protocol initiated under external witness authority. The consigliere slowly lifted his eyes toward the doorway. And for the first time, he understood the waitress was no longer the only person the system was protecting. The internal message froze on the consigliere's screen, pulsing once like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to him. Subject Protection Protocol initiated. External witness authority. He didn't move for a full second longer than anyone in the room expected. That stillness was the first fracture. Not panic. Recognition. The mafia boss saw it. He always saw the exact moment a man realized he was no longer inside the system he thought he controlled. "External witness?" The consigliere said carefully, forcing a small laugh that didn't find air. "That's not possible without." The waitress stepped forward before he finished. Not aggressively, not loudly, just enough to place herself inside the space between explanation and denial. Her hospital bracelet slipped slightly down her wrist, exposing the faded second name beneath the barcode again. She held the twins closer, then reached into her folded hospital blanket and pulled out a thin sealed envelope she had never shown anyone. It was creased at the corners, softened by being held too tightly for too long. "They gave me this before I left recovery," she said. "They said if anything in the system changed, I should bring it to someone who still remembers how records used to look before they were rewritten." The nurse took an involuntary step back. "That would violate chain of custody protocol." "Open it," the mafia boss said. The envelope broke easily under his fingers. Inside, a printed original maternity registry sheet. Not a copy. Not a digital reconstruction. Paper. Physical. Immutable. His eyes moved once across the page, then stopped. The room did not react at first because the brain resists information that destroys structure too quickly. Then the silence deepened. The consigliere leaned in slightly, just enough to read over the edge. And something in his expression changed, subtle but irreversible. The name field on the document did not match the system log. Not by spelling. By existence. The mother's name was there. Fully written. Fully signed. Fully authorized. And below it, his own signature. The mafia boss did not speak immediately. He simply stared at it, as if the paper had rewritten time without asking permission. The waitress's voice was almost quiet now. That's what they removed, she said. Not just me. The version where I existed as his mother on record. The nurse's composure finally broke into something thinner. That document is not valid in current system architecture. It was superseded. By what? The mafia boss asked. The question was not loud. It didn't need volume. The consigliere answered too quickly again. By corrected legal integration after emergency review. That was the second fracture. The mafia boss looked up slowly. Not at the waitress. Not at the nurse. At the consigliere. Who requested the correction? Silence. But this time it was not ignorance. It was refusal. The waitress placed her hand on the table, steadying herself. They told me I was never supposed to leave with my name intact, she said. But I kept this because I knew someone would eventually ask why I stopped existing after I gave birth. The mafia boss finally closed the folder. Not gently, not violently, just decisively, as if sealing something that could no longer be left open in public air. He stood there for a long moment looking at the paper, then at the system terminal still flashing its corrected logs, then at the consigliere who was no longer speaking at all. And for the first time, something in his expression shifted. Not anger, not shock, but a slow, controlled realization that had cost him more time than he could recover. He had not just missed a mistake. He had participated in its authorization. The waitress didn't look at him for forgiveness. She only held the twins closer, as if waiting for the world to decide whether they still belonged to it. The mafia boss reached forward, took the original registry sheet from the table, and placed it back inside the envelope without breaking eye contact with anyone in the room. Then he said, very quietly, "Call my attorney." The attorney arrived before the words in the room had fully settled. Not rushed, not surprised, just prepared, as if some version of this outcome had already been written and simply needed permission to exist. He took the envelope from the mafia boss without ceremony, opened it, and read in silence that felt almost procedural. The consigliere stood near the wall now, no longer speaking, his earlier confidence reduced to something flatter, more contained. The nurse had been escorted out without resistance, her protest dissolving halfway through its own explanation. The waitress remained where she was, holding the twins, her body finally still in a way that wasn't exhaustion anymore. It was waiting for reality to catch up. The mafia boss did not sit. He stayed standing as the attorney spoke. The original maternity registry is valid under state archival law, the attorney said evenly. Any override without dual family authorization constitutes unlawful data manipulation and civil fraud. The consigliere exhaled through his nose, a small attempt at disbelief. We are talking about internal hospital protocol, not federal litigation. The attorney turned one page. Not anymore. The room didn't change immediately, but something inside it did. The kind of shift that happens when language stops being opinion and becomes consequence. The mafia boss finally looked at the waitress, not at the twins, at her, as if seeing her fully for the first time without the interference of the system that had been describing her incorrectly. Do you want justice? He asked quietly. Or do you want distance from all of this? The question landed differently than anyone expected. Not as pity, not as control, as structure returning the choice to the person it had erased. The waitress adjusted her grip on the twins, then shook her head slightly. I don't want distance, she said. I want them to stop rewriting what happened every time I close my eyes. The attorney nodded once, as if that answer had been anticipated. Then we proceed with full correction filing. What followed wasn't dramatic. It was methodical. The hospital system was locked within minutes. Internal audit teams were notified. Access trails were frozen before they could be altered again. The consigliere's name appeared on 3 separate authorization chains, each one collapsing under its own contradiction when exposed to legal review. No one shouted. No one needed to. That was what made it final. Hours later, in a smaller administrative room with softer lighting, the waitress sat for the first time without holding herself like she might be removed again. A corrected document was placed in front of her. Her name was there, fully restored. Her signature line unbroken. Beneath it, the twins' names were officially linked to her record without condition or exception. The mafia boss stood by the window while it was signed. He didn't speak until it was done. Outside, the city continued moving like nothing had changed. Inside, something irreversible had settled. A staff member entered quietly and placed a folded item on the table beside her. It was the hospital. Bracelet restored, reprinted, no longer torn. The barcode was clean now. Under it, her name remained visible without fading, without interference. The waitress picked it up slowly, turning it over in her fingers as if expecting it to disappear again. Didn't. She looked at the mafia boss, then at the attorney, then back at the bracelet. It feels different, she said softly. Not like gratitude, like recognition returning to its correct place. The mafia boss stepped closer and took the bracelet from her hand. For a moment he just held it, then gently placed it back around her wrist. Properly secured this time, no longer cut, no longer broken. It was always supposed to be this way, he said. The waitress didn't respond immediately. She looked down at the twins, then at the bracelet, then at her own hands, no longer erased, no longer questioned. Later, when the room had emptied and the papers had been filed, someone brought her a cup of coffee. Hot, simple, the kind served without ceremony. She wrapped both hands around it, letting the warmth stay instead of disappearing into urgency. The mafia boss stood across from her, watching not the system anymore, but the person it had failed to see. She took a quiet breath and said, "I don't feel invisible anymore." And for the first time, the room didn't respond because there was nothing left to correct.